where you are in the world. Welcome to our Intune class here on the Academy. I think it's the 7th time we run this now. Started off in 2023 and been doing it pretty much 2 times per year since. My name is Johan. Together with Andrew, we will start off this event here, but before diving into the rest of the content, Andrew, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Johan. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those that are in Europe. My name's Andrew Johnson, solutions architect. Been in the systems management space primarily for my entire IT career, which has spanned about 18 years now. I've spent most of my time in higher education, though I've seen some other things as well, starting with Norton Ghost and Novell ZenWorks. Hopefully a little blast from the past for all of you. Eventually found Config Manager when the new version 2012 was being released. Really loved it, and started utilizing that all the way to now Intune, of course, and all of the various systems in between. So we've got a very, very fun week ahead of us, I would say. Really appreciate all of you being here. Johan, I appreciate being here with you again this week. And yeah, that's me.
All right, thank you, sir. My name is Johan Arvidmark. I have a very similar background to Andrew. As you can see from my gray beard, I'm a little bit older, started a little bit earlier in IT. Usually say that I've been an IT guy since I was about 10, but it wasn't until I was 16 in high school, or the equivalent of a high school in Sweden, where I started to work more professionally with it. I used to go down to a local computer shop after school and build machines, and we have to deploy them. It was DOS at the time, eventually became Windows, and also had my fair share of Novell in my blood. But I also started, let's see if I can grab this one here. Not sure how well it will. This is a relic. This is an SMS 1 CD from early 90s. That's when I started with business management for real, and been doing it since, working as a consultant primarily, but every now and then we do trainings as well. I like that mix because you learn a lot in training, so you learn a lot working out in the field with different organizations. You see what works and what doesn't, and we are here this week also to share a lot of notes from the field, things that we have stumbled across over the last decade or so with Intune. As you can see here from the slide deck, and you've obviously read the outline before, we will be joined by a good chunk of distinguished guests throughout the week for different sessions. We'll go over that schedule in just a little bit, but a couple of Microsoft MVPs will be joining us, talking about their particular specialty areas. So all in all, you'll be in great company this week. Now, a little bit on housekeeping. Everything is done through the Zoom meetings here, except for the remote labs, which you have received separate instructions for. But these recordings or these meetings are being recorded. We make them available within 24 hours from the live session. So basically, today's recording will show up at some point in the afternoon tomorrow. And the way you access them is basically where you accessed this live or Zoom information. But if I go over to the Academy here, and I'm going to log in as my alter ego Hans. Fun fact, that is actually one of my first names, but I'm known as Johan my entire life. But anyhow, when you click your dashboard here, this is where you see all the courses that you are enrolled to. So if I pick one of the courses we have done over the past, this is what it more or less would look like, where you will have the modules in the left pane here. And then under each module, there will be slides, there will be links and Q&A that we share here in the chat. There will be lab guides where there are lab guides in the module. And you will also, of course, find the recording here from the event. So this is how we made access to it. So just log into the Academy site and go to dashboard, and you will find the stuff. We do also have a Facebook group, which primarily is used to communicate with our staff, but feel free to communicate with each other as well. But for the more, as I call it, fun discussions, we have a technical forum. So this is a community that we started up about a year ago, year and a half. Like-minded peers. All our instructors are there. I think we're about 700 now, 800 maybe, getting up. So anyhow, and then in addition to that, most of you may have stumbled across our office hours, but this is something we do every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m., where Andrew and I spend 15-20 minutes sharing news from the week that passed, and then we open up for Q&A. So anyone can join at any point. There is no fee for this. This is just something we do for the community. We live stream on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Most of our attendees are joining us on YouTube, but pick your platform. We are there. And the link to this one, I'll put that in the chat as well. It's just our YouTube channel. And if you go to the live stream area there, you will also see all the previous recordings we have done, because we've been doing this for quite some time. And also under each of these events or live streams, if you look in the bottom here in the description, this is find all the news that we shared during that event. A trick I learned recently, if you have like this, you have an hour-long video, and you maybe don't have time to watch an hour-long video, you can actually ask ChatGPT to give you a summary of it. You can just feed it with a YouTube link and say, hey, give me a 5-minute summary of this, thank you very much, and it does it. So it's really useful if you need to consume a lot of information quickly. So anywho, I'll put that one in the chat. Give me just a moment. I have mastered copy and paste once. Office hours. Up there. And then we have these two links here as well. There we are. Now, in addition to this, as I mentioned before, we have a remote lab environment. We will not be running config manager this time around, but we will have a domain controller present. Not so much for being a domain controller, but we use it to get the FTP and DNS services to all the VMs, the client VMs that we are deploying and enrolling into Intune throughout this week here. So each of you have your own dedicated Hyper-V host, and we'll come back and talk more about lab environment later, but that's what we have. Now, the way the week is laid out is the following. We have the keynote here with Kent later today. We start to get going with some labs before then. After the keynote, we break for lunch, and then we start working our way through the different areas of Intune, covering anything from enrollment and deploying apps and scripts today. Tomorrow, we follow up with device configuration, so device basically policies, the equivalent of group policies, but Intune style. And then we are joined by Jürgen Nilsson, one of the MVPs for a troubleshooting session. A dang good one, I must say. I usually pick up a good few things myself during that one. He's a great presenter. Then in the afternoon, we follow up with more device configurations, and also a little bit about RBAC, so delegating access to other folks in your company. And then we end up strong with Windows Autopilot. And pretty much every module that you see here, except some of the external speakers, it also comes with a lab that you will be doing. So 40–50% of the time that you will spend here this week is going to be hands-on labs, because I mean that's a great way to learn stuff by actually doing it. It turns out that if you guys spend, say, 700 hours in the Intune admin console, you'll get pretty good at the Intune admin console. In fact, it's hard not to get good if you spend that many hours in it. So you each will also be given a lab tenant. Unfortunately, Microsoft stopped handing out trials. We'll come back to that later, but we were able to purchase short-term tenants for each of you. So they're only valid for I think 7 more days, but they will be here through the week. So anyhow, sidebar there. Wednesday, we have been joined by Team Cloudway, so Jan Ketil Skanke and Sandy will take you through mobile device management, so iOS and Android and stuff. Then Andrew now will come back and do software updates in the afternoon, followed by, third-party patching. And finally, for those of you that want, we will host the office hours on Wednesday. We totally understand that after listening to us for like the whole day would take it out of you, but we'll be happy if you join. Thursday, we are back with Team Cloudway, this time focusing on graph, so automation, building reports and stuff through Intune. After lunch, we have cloud imaging, and this is primarily on how to deploy devices so they get automatically enrolled into Intune, both with bulk enrollment packages, but also through autopilot. Because as well as you will learn in the autopilot session, you can also be an OEM. You can deploy machine yourself in such a way so they get enrolled that fashion. It's quite a popular scenario too. And finally, on Thursday, we're being joined here by Richard Hicks, taking us through all of VPN. And he probably going to mention a thing or two about certificates, because that's what he really likes to talk about. And Intune these days has support for it. With the proper license, you can have a cloud PKA running. And finally, on Friday, this is where we start off nicely with managing drivers and BIOS through Intune. Microsoft added in support for that about 3 years ago, all in all. Then we have a community Yule session. We're showcasing a lot of solutions out there that integrates nicely with Intune. We're also going to share a couple during the week with you, because quite frankly, there is so many good community solutions out there that really enhances and extends the way you work with Microsoft Intune. And just the community itself is downright fantastic. There are so many folks out there providing resources, tools, scripts, often on their spare time, but they share it for everyone to use. And I mean, for example, if you go to LinkedIn and go to the endpoint management LinkedIn group, I think they're closing in on 50,000 members right now. It's just a massive community around the Intune product. And in our opinion, if you want to get really good at Intune and you want to work with that on a daily basis, highly recommend to engage with the community. It doesn't mean that you have to write blog posts and not, but just be active, because there is so much stuff happening all the time in the platform. Microsoft are making changes sometimes several times per month on the platform, sometimes just once a month, but there is a lot going on in the Intune platform and the ecosystem. Otherwise, Friday is our troubleshooting day, because I hate to break it to you, but even with Intune, things can go wrong, and they will. So we need the right tools to troubleshoot them. And finally, for those of you that are still feeling like energetic on a late Friday afternoon here, we'll open up what we call a Swedish smorgasbord of labs. So a couple of bonus extra labs, totally optional. But for those of you that want to stick around and do them, they will be available at that time. So that's what the week looked like. All right. Let's see. I did open up the slide deck here. Now, for those of you that are, I know a couple of you are fairly new into Intune. I know a good few of you have used it for a while, but the shorthand version, just to level set here, Intune is Microsoft Premier management stack, cloud-based management stack for mobile device management and mobile application management. In this class here, the main focus is Windows client management, but there is a lot of support as well, as you will learn, and also tools called Cloudway are coming in. Intune requires an identity provider, and that identity provider happened to be Entra, formerly known as Azure AD. I was a little bit upset about that name change when it came, but all right, fine. I understand their reasoning. There is so much more to Azure than just identity. That, you know, storage and VMs and functions and all other stuff. So I get that. The problem with that rename was often we finally had an understanding in the industry what it was. Even managers got it. They knew what Azure AD was. And then with that name change, like, whoop, what happened? What is Entrance like? All right, here we go. Anyhow, when you search for resources these days, you often have to search for both because there are like 10 years of legacy documentation and blog posts and whatnot out there that's still branded Azure AD that are still good information. And Intune also has integration into Config Manager. There are a ton of organizations out there who are still running them together. Of the customers I've been working with the last decade or so, about 90%, give or take, are still in a co-management state. There are a couple who does Intune only. There are a couple that actually went back to Config Manager, but that is like a rare exception. But most of them still have them side by side, and we will talk more about why that is. All right. Let me just bring up my notes real quick here. Also, I should mention, we love questions. We absolutely love questions. So if we can have interactive discussions throughout the training here, nobody's happier than we are. So feel free to either unmute the microphone if you have a question. You can post them in the Q&A, which I recommend because I prefer that over the chat because Q&A, the question stays there until we answer them. The chat, where a lot of students can be quite busy and it's easy to miss one, but we do keep an eye on the chat as well. So basically 3 options for you there. All right. Now about the notes that I saved out. Go. This list here is absolutely not a complete feature list of what's available in Intune. But what you see here on the screen is what pretty much every company that uses Intune are using. They are using it to configure security on devices like conditional access, BitLocker, firewall, Defender, integrate with other security platforms like Defender for Endpoint, the security site at Microsoft. And typically everything you used to be able to do or used to do in group policies, applying configurations to devices. And then we have app deployments. We have running scripts. So technically, you can run scripts as apps, but there are built-in solutions in the platform itself to run scripts either standalone or as part of remediation, where you basically have a schedule that runs every hour, every day, whatever on the clients. Intune manages software updates. There is some integration with Windows Auto Patch, Microsoft's managed service for software updates. And of course, there is third-party application support in the platform as well. And as I mentioned, it's not just only Windows 10 and Windows 11 clients. It does have support for other platforms as well. So macOS, iOS, Chrome, etc. Do you notice what's not on this list? Servers. Intune does not manage servers. You can still have servers managed by cloud to some extent, but Intune, you cannot enroll a server into Intune in the same way as you enroll a client. It simply doesn't have those components, does not have that support. So for example, if you want to use cloud today to manage software updates for servers, Intune is not it. You have to use something else like either a third-party vendor or Azure Arc. For Microsoft, it has the Azure Update Management as well built into it. It's not exactly cheap, but it works, and it works well. All right. Now,
Johan?
yes, of course.
Yes, Olivier speaking. Hello. Maybe a little bit question about long-term services and IoT version of Windows 10 and 11.
Oh, I mean, we still have companies that are using the Windows 10 LTSC versions
Yes.
because they are still supported. LTSC 2019, for example, was supported until 2029, so another 4 years. And Intune supports Windows the LTSC versions of Windows. The only thing that it doesn't support is features in Intune that is using what's called a deployment service. So forget about feature updates, for example. Cannot do that. But you can do everything else that you usually use Intune for those long-term servicing channel devices. And a fun fact, we actually had a good few companies that started to downgrade their Windows 10 versions, especially if they were like kiosk type devices from 22H2 to LTSC 2019, just to get that longer support for those devices. Now, technically, of course, you can pay for updates as well. You have the option of paying for another 3 years of Windows 10 updates for normal Windows 10 Enterprise and Education versions. So again, fully supported by the platform, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Now, licensing with Microsoft is always interesting, and Intune is no exception. But there is hope. There is a gentleman named Aaron Dinich. He happened to work for Microsoft, but this is not an official Microsoft documentation. However, on this link here, this is the best license summary you will ever find around Microsoft offerings for cloud solutions, for management, I should say. So for example, if I'm interested in, okay, what's really included in an EMS E5 license, I will simply click here and it will take me to that. This is everything that is included in that license. And for each and every of these features, there is a link that will take you to the Microsoft documentation for that particular feature. But if you're trying to figure out what licenses to get, depending on what you need, etc., this is a downright amazing documentation. And Aaron has been keeping this one updated from time to time. I saw the question there regarding a good map for the government licenses. I have not seen one. The only thing I've seen is the Microsoft documentation where they state basically what you cannot do in a government cloud, because there is a difference. It's basically a separate setup. So you don't have the same feature parity, unfortunately. But that's just, I cannot change that how much I want to. It's out of our control there. But great question. Other than that, if you go to a tenant, like one of our lab tenants here, and I did not mean to go to that one, I meant to go to this one. Monday. I only had 2 cups of coffee.
That's it?
That's it. I actually slept in a little bit this morning. I was up, I slept in until 6.
Hey, nice. That's
Yeah,
a win.
That's a win. Anyhow, when you log into your admin portal, the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, this is where you deal with all your products and licenses and whatnot. Come on. And this, by the way, is an Intune feature that you may stumble across also. Sometimes when you log into this platform, you will see nothing, even if you have permission to see everything. Don't be surprised if you have 2 organizations listed. They are the same organization, but they just listed twice. And depending on which one you pick, you will see the licenses. I've seen this at least 10 tenants by now, and I just didn't bother contacting Microsoft support about it, because that's going to be like a 3-month support case at best. Anyhow, here you can see what we have here on Lab Tenant. You can see that we have a couple of AMS E5 licenses. We have a Microsoft 365 E5 license. We added in a couple of vulnerabilities, so we can do this advanced inventory for Defender, including BIOS updates or BIOS risks, security issues with BIOSes, and then a Windows 11 license here. And this is usually what you need to have in one extent to be able to use Intune. So either a lovely combination of an AMS E5 together with Windows, because there are still features in Intune that requires client licensing, or you go all in and buy something that includes all of those into the platform. But again, if you go back to that map site that I shared, that's where you see what stuff is included. Worth mentioning is when you buy Intune, you get Config Manager. So if you want to have some sort of imaging solution around because you want to do imaging, you have it. You may not use it for systems management, but it's a pretty decent imaging solution. It's been around for a long time. And the same way, if you have Config Manager, you have Intune. Not all of it, but basic stuff. And then you can also extend Intune, buying additional things to it. For example, Intune Suite will give you 7 additional projects or products on top of Intune. It's not exactly cheap. It's like $10 per user per month. So that's out pretty quickly in the yearly budget. But we will talk more about that throughout the week here. Anything you'd like to add on the licensing side, Andrew?
No, sir. Pretty straightforward on that one.
All right. So in order to get an Intune environment up and running, we strongly recommend that you guys register it with an external domain. It's not a requirement. You can still use that on Microsoft.com, that domain that you get when you're signing up, but we do recommend having a real domain. They're not terribly expensive even for a lab to buy. The reason we recommend that is not just so that they can play around with the exchange and other stuff, but if you ever need to contact support, they're going to require that one of your global admin accounts have an email address that actually works. I stumbled across this the first time a couple of years back. I was placing a support call for large applications because at the time Intune only supported 8. And if you wanted larger, you have to submit a request to get it to increase that limit. These days, everyone gets 30 gigs, but back then we didn't. So I had to place a support call or a support file, a support case. And the gentleman I spoke to, like, I need your email address. Yeah, this is my email address. I'm an owner of the account. You can see that I own this tenant. No, it has to be an email address of a global admin account. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm owning this tenant. They were not kidding. And eventually I gave in and bought 1 mailbox for a change, just so that I can file that support case. Anyhow, sidebar. Now, this one is interesting. This used to be our go-to license when you just wanted to try out things in Intune, because it came with a lot of good stuff. You got 25 users, you got it accessed initially for a month, but then it just renewed and renewed and renewed. and pretty much everybody could sign up for it. Now, this one is more restrictive these days. Now you need to have a Visual Studio subscription in order to sign up for it. Turn out there's folks out there that were misusing this, basically spinning up thousands and thousands of tenants. And eventually Microsoft like, no, this is not working. Worth noting about that one is absolutely not supported for production. So it's strictly for development, and what Microsoft calls development is a very, very gray area. But they basically monitor your usage of it and make sure that you are doing it what you're supposed to with it. So what Andrew and I recommend, first of all, we recommend every company to have at least 2 separate tenants. 2 separate Entra, 2 separate Intunes. So you have a production environment and you have a pre-production environment. In that pre-production environment is that where you do all your testing, play around with new features, you do it there, because then you don't risk to break anything in production. If you want a testing like security lockdown policies, you can do it there. And then when you're done with those, you can just transform that or publish that information over to your production tenant. There are community solutions that will help to do that. You can do that with PowerShell. There are even platforms like Enforce and others that you can buy that will manage multiple tenants for you, but that is usually a little bit extra. It's more for like service providers and whatnot. But this is something we strongly recommend, to have access to a lab environment, because you don't have to do all mistakes in production. It's a very famous saying across both Intune and config manager admins that every admin has a test environment. And a few lucky ones also have a production environment. So the gist there is simply have something that you can play around with. And it doesn't have to be very big. It can be 3 user licenses, because each user can have 15 devices. So you can have almost 50 devices, well, 45 then, that you play around with in a lab. And you guys can be global admins in that one. No risks. Worst case, you break your lab. So what? Rebuild it, have it reset. But production, however, that's a different story. So worth mentioning. Now, licensing. Andrew, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, of course. So to start using Intune, of course, we need to have some licenses, and we need to assign those licenses primarily to users. In the case of Intune, and if we're not assigning those licenses, we're going to have a bad time. We're not going to be able to use Intune too well. There are a couple of ways that we can do this, and you'll all see this here today in some of the labs that you'll do. But you can assign licenses directly to a user object. But what we recommend, especially in production, is to just do this via group membership. So we can create an Entra ID group, we can assign a license to that group or multiple licenses to that group, and as users become members of that group, either manually or through some dynamic queries that you can write, they will either be granted a license, or when they leave that group, the license will be removed. This is helpful for a number of reasons. First of all, manageability is so much easier. As you have users become members of that group, they just receive those licenses automatically. You don't have to worry about them. But even in a lab, that helps out a lot. The number of times that I have forgotten to assign a license to a user in a lab when I'm testing something, and it ends up wasting a little bit of time because I forgot to do that. It's happened more than once, let's say. So Johan and I prefer group membership absolutely for licensing. Now, each one of your users that has an Intune license can assign or can enroll 15 devices. But Johan, I'm going to drop a link into the chat here. Would you mind bringing it up on the screen, please?
I should be able to do that.
And
Sure.
then if you don't mind scrolling down just a little bit right there. Thank you, sir. This article here, it's a fantastic documentation. Highly recommend understanding the nuance here of device limits in Intune. So as I said, users can enroll up to 15 devices on their own, but oftentimes devices are being enrolled through these scenarios that Johan just showed here. Either co-management and config manager is handling that enrollment, or automatic enrollment through group policy, or autopilot enrollment, which we'll talk about, of course, later this week. And those scenarios do not count against the user's device limit. So something also to keep in mind when we're talking about licensing. So a few things there on licensing. I think that we've talked about more more licensing tips and tricks will come up throughout the week for sure.
Indeed. All right. Now, throughout the week, we will go through pretty much every enrollment method there is for enrolling devices into the platform. But there are two methods that stands out. Like if there are 10 companies out there, you can bet that at least 9 of them are using one of these two for enrollment. So Entra join plus auto enrollment, that's typically what Microsoft refers as a cloud native type scenario when you are managed by Entra and Intune only. However, hybrid is still popular. It's still a lot of organizations who have a legacy Active Directory and they set it up so they will synchronize users and devices from AD to Entra. And as part of that process, you can just ask it nicely for, hey, please enroll the device in Intune as well, and it will. So also popular. And of course, Windows Autopilot, as mentioned here, is a very popular method. So that's where we're going to start enrolling devices today, doing that the native way, and then we'll come back to the more complicated. Yeah, of course.
About assigning licenses. So say it's only to users that a license can be assigned. How about if you have a scenario where the device is used in a shared device environment or in a dedication kind of setup? What would
so the keyword here is typically assigned to users. Intune does support device licenses as well. It's just not used as common as the user-based licenses. But yes, there are models for shared devices also.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I do think we have coming up maybe early this afternoon, Johan, device enrollment managers and things like that help with that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, basically enrolling devices on behalf of upcoming users for the device. We can do bulk enrollment for that as well. 2 options there, but great question. But that leads us into our very first lab. I will take you maybe 10-15 minutes to do, and then we will be joined by Kent for the keynote. And if you're wanted to take a quick coffee at the same time, we will not be offended in any way. Actually, a good idea to settle, be ready for that. But the reason we do this one first is because in this one, you will create a couple of users, a group, you will assign licenses to them, but you will also set up your tenant to support automatic enrollment. And what we learned over the years is that when you do that configuration in Intune, it actually takes a little while, or can take a little while, until it becomes active. So that's why we do this the very, very first thing in the morning, so that when we are done, we're actually doing enrollment later today, it will be ready. So I'm going to go ahead and share a lab here in the chat. If you just one moment. And this lab is done through the Intune tenant. We recommend opening it up on your Hyper-V host in Edge. That way we know there are no restrictions on the network for anything, but of course you can use any browser to open it. But let me go ahead and save that one there. There we are. You should see a PDF document in the Zoom chat. That is the very first lab. Please enjoy the lab, and Andrew and I'll be here if you guys have any questions. And this is one of the labs that you guys absolutely have to do. They won't be able to do anything else in the entire training if you don't do this one. Turns out licenses are important. All right, everyone.